Hello, folks. Hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, Ali and Bernard and Kaylin and Chester and Claudia, Dimitri, Eduardo, Evie, Hannah, Itamar, John, Joshua, Casey. Hello. Kristen. Hello. Leah, Lisa, Lucy. Hello, hello. Maria. Hello. Maria, Matan. Hello, everybody. Natalie. Hello. Nice to see everybody here today. So nice to see you. Fantastic. All right. Well, we're going to wait a few moments. Just let the room populate. If you want to go over to the chat, love to get a sense of who you are, where you're coming from. Be nice to hear from you. Hello, Pia. Pia was a former student in this course, as was Rob. Hello, Rob. Rachel.
I see a few other Brandon, former student. I think there
Yeah.
was others, lots of former permaculture students, Matan, hey Melania,
Toby, Ute,
Anna.
Vashi. Hello, folks. Welcome.
It's so cool to see everyone. Ah,
Lourdes from Mexico. Hello. Now we're getting. Yeah, Joshua. Hello. Nice to see you again, Josh. Lucy in Berlin,
Sydney.
former
Hi,
PDC
Sydney.
student. Nice. Hello, everybody. We'll be using the chat a fair bit today, so take some time, get acquainted, say hello in the chat. Great time. Rudy and Hannah here from Brazil. Hello. Sanders from Belgium. Sanders is in the PDC right now. Great.
Hannah and
Amazing,
Rudy,
folks.
we missed you in our in-person course. We wish you could have joined us. So they almost came from Brazil.
Ah, there we go. There we go. Luca, Natalie, hello, hello. Nice to see everybody here. My goodness. So good to see y'all. So good to have you all here. That's fantastic. Well, we're very excited to have you all here today. Thank you so much for being present. Hannah wished she could have been there. No doubts. I wish I could have been there.
La próxima,
Yeah, next time. Next time.
July.
Right, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the July course. Stenbergen. I've been talking to Stenbergen about Centropic agroforestry for a while. Nice to have you here, sir. He's from Kenya. He's in a very dry spot working with a university. Lots of students. July 2026. Yeah, I like seeing the emojis there, everybody. Fantastic. Fantastic. All right. Brandon is from Southern California. Excited to be back learning from you all. We're excited to see you here, Brandon. This is excellent. Great. Regen in Italy, Matan. Hello. All right, folks.
Matan, you're there now. You're in Italy. You made it.
Savory Island. That is the Hawaii of Canada. I did some work in Powell River years ago. Alma from Guatemala. Hello. Miram from Holland. Will. Hello, Will. Nice to see you. My goodness. This is a reunion, Scott. This
So
isn't a
fun.
webinar.
I
This is
love it.
just great people coming together. I love
Hey,
this.
Greece.
I love this. This is great. Well,
Oh,
welcome everybody.
Anaí. Hi, Anaí. Good to see you.
So good. Mira and Vlad. Mira's in the PDC. Vlad's been in some of the decision-making courses. This is great. Eva. Oh, moving back to Suriname. Okay. Nice.
Croatia.
Mars here from Croatia. Heck yeah. We're about to hit 100. My goodness. Laura from Spain. All right. Fantastic, everybody. So good. Well, I think it's that time. I think it's that time. So hello and welcome everyone to Regenerative Living's Syntropic Farming webinar. Today we're going to be celebrating Syntropic Farming and also the upcoming Syntropic Farming Primer course. And I'm just so glad you're here with us. The more people who understand how to work with forests, forest succession, living systems, growing food, regenerating land, the better prepared we are for the challenges ahead and what seems to be daily a more uncertain future. So, thank you deeply. Really appreciate your interest in this topic and for being part of a more resilient, a more abundant future. So, this is an interactive webinar. That might be new to you, but there's a great opportunity to connect and share and converse. This means you'll hear me pause a couple of times today, and Scott as well. And we're going to take a moment to ask a question. You'll have a chance to answer and a chance to share. And that's with intent. So, to start off, you've already let me know where you are in the world. So, we've got a chance to actually see where you are. You know where the chat is. That's great. And we believe if this whole thing, if this whole webinar today was just me and Scott talking to you for over an hour, in our opinion, not only would it be a bit of an insult to you because you all have wisdoms and teachings to share, but it would also be probably a slight waste of time because if that's all it was, this could have been a recording and you could watch it at any time. And we're all here to share, build community in small and large ways. And we asked you to be live for a reason. Connecting with our land, growing any type of plant system, it's a conversation. We're in community. We're part of that web of life. And to do the work we want to do in this world, we have to be in communion with ourselves, with the tools and the processes we use. And gathering remotely in video webinars to not interact, it's really to ignore the opportunity to relate to each other. So keep your eye open. There's a great opportunity. Have a pencil or a pen at the ready or your computer to be able to answer some questions, to converse, to chat with each other. We have that opportunity here. So the mission of Regenerative Living, the website, the online educational platform I run, is to learn practical skills to live on the planet as if we intend to stay. And that includes people care and community, but it also includes this incredible conversation about syntropic farming. And I'm just so pleased to have Scott here with me today, and I'll talk a little bit about him. But to put your mind at ease, let's give you a little foreknowledge of what we're going to run so that way you understand what's coming. You can kind of calm yourself into understanding what's going to happen. And as a primer, if anything isn't for you, if there's any section here you don't want to participate in, please don't. That's okay. We want to invite you all to participate in the level you want. And if you want to step out for a bit, that's totally fine. So first and foremost, I'm going to introduce regenerative living a little bit more deeply. I'm going to give you a little peek into the Syntropic Farming primer and kind of the why behind we decided to run the course. Then Scott's going to give us an incredible 45 to 50 minute Syntropic Farming deep dive. He's going to bring out the principles, the practices, the processes. We'll have some opportunities within that conversation where we'll ask questions. We'll give you time to reflect. You'll have an opportunity to share into the chat. Really exciting time to be able to do that. And after that, I'm going to talk in a deeper level about the course, the Syntropic Farming course. We're here to celebrate and share that course is available for participation. There's going to be a time to offer between now and Sunday if folks are keen to jump into that course. That'll run for about 5 or 10 minutes. If you don't want to be part of that, if you want to take a bathroom break, take a bar break, nourish yourself, that's totally fine. And then we're going to have some Q&A. So in Zoom, there's 2 sections here to be aware of. We have the chat section where you can answer questions, you can make comments on what you're seeing. And if you have questions, in the Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen with a little question mark inside the callout box, that's where we're going to put our questions. And there'll be a moment when we transition from the course offer to the Q&A where Scott will answer any of the questions typing back. So there'll be an opportunity there. So if you don't have your question answered live, definitely check out the answered section of the Q&A. Chances are you'll see it there. And we'll end at about an hour and a half, maybe an hour and 40 minutes. And after that, Scott and I have decided we're going to stay on for a little bonus time. So if anybody wants to stick around and ask some deeper questions, we're really excited to do that with all of you. So if you're just joining us, let us know where you're coming from in the chat. Would love to hear from you, what you're working on, what size of land you're working on, what size of land you want to work on. Sometimes the work we do in education is for something in the future. So let everybody know where you're coming from. And if you're working on land, if you're working on a syntropic system, we want to take a moment here to really get to know each other. So starting off, regenerative living started in 2019, And I noticed that a lot of my friends and colleagues, they were kind of getting stuck. They were getting stuck in their own isms, their ologies, their altars. They were becoming, recalcitrant. They were becoming polarized. And I didn't want to offer something purely in the vein of any one technique or conversation. So I reached out to a good friend of mine, and we offered the very first regenerative living course, Joe Tobias of Root Shoot Soils. Together, we offered the art and science of cultivating living soils. And it was our very first run to offer something that was about learning practical skills to live on this planet as if we intend to stay. So now, after 6 years, 7 years, we've steadily been increasing our course catalog, inviting instructors, practitioners, individuals who have a passion to share their knowledge. And we've gone from water to erosion control to soil to biochar to telling our stories through sustainable social media. A lot of people kind of go, like, you work with soil. Why are you trying to tell people about social media? Because if we don't tell our story, chances are people aren't going to hear about it. And if they can't hear about it, then they can't emulate it and we can't grow what we're doing in terms of the work. So that becomes a part of it too. This coming season, we have a number of great courses that are coming up. We've got a daily compass. If you've ever been working with values-based decision making, I know a couple of the students are here. If you want to help me out and talk about the course in the chat, I'd greatly appreciate it. We also have this Syntropic Farming primer that's going to start in February 11th. Sustainable social media is coming up. We've got the immersive values-based decision making, how to make good decisions for your land, yourself, your project. And then we have decoding a soil lab report in the spring. So if you've ever wanted to know what is on that page when we get it back from the soil lab, we're going to tell you. And I'm teaming back up with Porvenir Design and Scott. Come June 2026, if you've always wanted to take a PDC that was specific to the tropics, that leverages our experience of teaching over 150 PDCs, being in permaculture for over 40 years collectively, and really learning what it's like to work with permaculture in the tropics, definitely check that out. Everybody who's on this call today is going to be enrolled into the Muck About newsletter where we tell everybody. So if you're interested, definitely check out that email. Keep your eyes on your inbox. So before we get into the content, I want to start with a really simple question. So this is a good place to grab your pens, get ready to think. So on one hand, you already know this answer. You wouldn't be here otherwise. But the reason I'm giving you this question is because connecting to why you're here tends to make the learning more meaningful, more impactful, making more connections when we take a look at learning theory. And the second reason is that when you hear each other's answers, it often changes the significance of the experience that we're all going to be in for this next little while. So what I want to do is give you 90 seconds, not a long time, but we can do quite a bit in 90 seconds to be with this question and capture whatever comes up. So what we want to know about you is, why is it important to be learning about syntropic farming today? Why is it important to you, potentially for your community, or perhaps even the world? So we're going to take 90 seconds here, and I just want to hear from all of you fine folks. Start to write it down. After the 90 seconds, I'll ask you to share it in the chat. So why is it important to be here learning about syntropic farming today? Why is it important to you, to your community, or perhaps the world? So take some time. We'll come back to you here very shortly. Some great answers already coming in, and we're not even done the thinking phase. This is excellent, folks. Thank you. Okay, wherever you're at, whatever your thought process is, thanks so much for your time. So, Nicholas, because it's one of the fastest regenerative techniques and we're running out of time, here. I don't know who else feels that way, but I think Scott and I are of the same mind. Kyle, I would like to be able to incorporate this into my everyday life and my business. A lot of people who come to this work because they want to incorporate it and start to make a change in their occupation. It seems fun. Dimitri, yeah, 100%. Maria, because of the synergies between permaculture and syntropic farming, 100%. There's such a synergy there. We go deep into that within the work that Scott offers. Lisa, I've been able to greatly regenerate soil and regenerative techniques in annual crops, but feel like integrating annuals with perennials in an alley system will be better for long-term sustainable soil health. Wonderful, Lisa. Yeah, Scott talks about that a bunch in this work, and he's seen it happen firsthand. Verena, we need new, more sustainable and holistic kinds of agriculture, and SF seems to offer such perspectives. I'm a newbie. If anybody else is a newbie, feel free to say so. Most of us all start there. All the reasons you listed, these are fantastic, folks. Thank you so much for this. Lovely. And so with this, hold this as a little key, as a little gem as we go through this work. Why are you here? What are you doing? Why is it important? This can be such a boon to us as we start to work throughout the course of the webinar, but also in the work of learning this. So I'm excited for this today. So about 2 years ago, I reached out to Scott. We had an opportunity to chat. He had reached out to me years previously about values-based decision-making. And it was a cold call because while we had spoken before, we didn't know each other well. And I'd seen Scott's work. I loved his ethic, his ethos, but also his heart. He brings a lot of heart to the work he does. He's an incredible educator. He comes from such an understanding to share and know and grow. And he was amenable for building this course. And a year and a half ago, we offered the very first one. And what we tried to do is we tried to address the major issues that people had with syntropic farming, syntropic agroforestry, if you know it by the other name. And we came down to this, there's a lack of confidence for a lot of people when they start this. There's no clear starting point. There's so many videos, there's so many articles, there's books, but where do you start? How do you know what to do? Because so much of where we start is where we're at and what we do. So we realized that people also weren't following these principles of syntropic farming. And as Scott was telling me last night as we were talking about these points, he was saying, no, too many people make mistakes in the field instead of on paper. That's the great use of paper. You can use it, rip it up, try it again, and you're not using a whole lot of calories. So being able to be present to these elements, and maybe some of you can relate or you feel similarly. If you do feel similarly about any of these, if you can say, yeah, that's me. I know it was me a year and a half ago and I didn't know much about syntropic farming. Feel free to put it in the chat. But that's why I'm so excited today to be able to share Scott's work and his conversation with everybody. Scott, thank you for being here. Thank you for your work to bring you to such a place because you've been doing this for a long time. And thank you for your heart because you bring such a desire to help and to guide each student you work with. So with that, Scott, I'm going to pass it on over to you. And I'm really excited to go through the content with you today.
Amazing. Well, thank you for your kind words. And it's really amazing to see so many familiar faces here. I see a lot of people with experience in syntropic farming. In this chat, I saw Alessandro from Mamadeco, Eric over in upstate New York, a lot of people that I admire that you might even see photos of your places here in this slideshow. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at syntropic farming across climates. And the word syntropy, I think for a lot of people starting out, they hear the syntropic, they think of the word tropic, they think it's for the tropics. I'm here in Costa Rica in the tropics. But in reality, it is a agricultural methodology based on a set of principles. And these are principles that we can apply anywhere in the world. And so that's what we're going to look at today. where these work around the world. We'll start with a bit of a dive into the basics. We'll build a foundational language, et cetera, and then we'll take it from there. So just a bit about myself and our team. Our company's called Porvenir Design. We're based here in Costa Rica, though we do work in the global tropics, and then increasingly in Mediterranean temperate climates as my life now pulls me between Costa Rica and southern Italy. Our main work is really like whole site design planning. So kind of classic permaculture design. We get approached by clients who often have larger properties, who want to develop these more complex sites, incorporating, maybe a hotel, an Airbnb, incorporating a development, an eco village, a retreat center, and we help put all of that together. Within that, my particular expertise is agroforestry and syntropic farming. This is something I'm in every single day. This past weekend, we finished a workshop here in Costa Rica with 40 attendees. I still have my notes. They still have mud on them. So I need to organize those after this call. So this is something that I'm in really every day. What we want to do as we dive into this is we want to build a pattern language together. And that might be an idea that's familiar to you if you come from a permaculture background. What that means is that as we look at these principles of syntropic farming, they will apply anywhere in the world across contexts, scales, scopes, and we will never abandon them. And if we're good at that, which some of you are, some of the people in this group who are really pushing the edge of this in new climates, we start to see patterns emerge. And I am not an expert in syntropic farming in all of the climates around the world. And I don't know if anyone is, probably not. If they say they are, they're probably not. What I am very good at is the synthesis, the coalescing of these ideas into frameworks, into a pattern language. And so that's what we're going to explore together today. Let's just dive into the history and definition of syntropic farming so we are on the same page. The word syntropy is a balance to the word entropy, which of course comes from the second law of thermodynamics that states in a closed system, energy tends to disperse. It moves toward disorder, toward chaos, etc. In syntropic systems, we find that the opposite happens. We accumulate energy, and this is because we're working with biological systems. So these are not closed systems, they're open systems. So the simple example is that the tree falls in the forest. In a system of entropy, what will happen is that all those nutrients will slowly degrade, they will oxidize, volatilize, erosion will send everything to the low point in the landscape. New plants won't grow and the site will become barren. But what actually happens if we have enough moisture is that ecological succession occurs. Plants replace other plants. We move forward and we see an increase in fertility, water cycling, carbon or life. This is the process of syntropy that we're talking about in syntropic farming. It is a word coined and developed by Ernst Goscht. Ernst Goscht was a Swiss plant geneticist. Today, he must be, I want to say around 80 years old. I can't remember exactly. His early career, he was working with sugar beets and corn, and he was working to adapt them to increasingly degraded farming landscapes. So he was looking at genetically modifying these crops. He was looking at plant breeding. And within this framework of like the monoculture of the mind, the monoculture of the field, he had a classic aha moment. This moment will sound probably fairly benign to most of you who are probably on a more radical track than he was at that moment. But his moment was very simple. It was, why am I adapting these plants to degraded land instead of regenerating the land so the plants can live happily where they are? Again, a very simple concept, but something that sent him on a journey that took him to Brazil in the late 70s. He came to Costa Rica to develop a lot of research. And then he really moved to Brazil in, I think, 1982, and he bought his farm in Bahia. Bahia is a classic, like, cacao land of Brazil. So he set about studying what we can call the sociology of plants and plant communities. How do plants relate to each other? And how can we leverage those relationships and everything that happens in those relationships to build soil, to grow food, etc. He was doing all of this within the context of Brazil. And I think this is important as we step out of the Brazilian context, wherever we are in the world. This is a context of a heavily deforested nation state. There was a drastic need for reforestation to get farmers to plant trees. His farm was this classic farming landscape of heavily degraded pasture, and you would walk like 3 meters from that degraded pasture, and there was the majestic tropical forest just thriving, not caring about anything, cycling nutrients, pumping water, full of life. And he was shocked by this, the juxtaposition, the point of tension in mere meters. So as he developed this process, like, how do you get farmers to plant trees? Like, you plant a cacao tree, you're going to wait minimum 3 years until it produces. Degraded land, it could take longer. So syntropic farming, what it does to resolve this is it provides a yield at the very beginning of a system to the very end of a system, this successional arriving of yields. So at a simple level, like a radish might come out of the system on day 30, and a timber tree might come out of the system at year 30. And the process of syntropic farming is very simple. All we do here is we're planting seeds and we're pruning trees. And I will remind you of that, because we can complexify that. And we'll look at spreadsheets and we'll go deeper into these things in our online course or in other courses or in your own study. But really all we're doing is we're planting seeds and pruning trees. The result of that is an agroforestry practice. That's what syntropic farming is at a very simple, like, agronomy level. So if we want to nest it within our understanding of agriculture, permaculture, et cetera, it is agroforestry. It's combining woody perennials with crops or animals. It's very comparable to other practices like alley cropping, forest farming, food forests, analog forestry. I really like to place it side by side of biodynamic farming, which is a whole farming methodology that has its own set of ethics, principles, practices, and community around it. If I walk into a syntropic farm and a biodynamic farm, they will look very different, but there'll be similarities. And so I think as you're trying to understand how it exists in relation to permaculture and other practices, that's a nice way to think of it. Let's dip into the ecology of syntropic farming, which is a big, fun conversation. We'll try to keep it short for time's sake. What we're doing here, very simply, is imitating the forest, like many regenerative practices that you've perhaps studied. We are leveraging this process of ecological succession to move from simpler to more complex forms of life, relationships, cycling, etc. And on a practical level, we're planting groups of plants that change the conditions, improve the conditions to make the way for the next group of plants. Within those groups of plants, some produce food, some are there just to feed the soil, attract pollinators, cycle nutrients, create shade, etc. This process is really driven by photosynthesis. So the act of plants capturing sunlight on their leaves, turning that into carbon, into sugars, building their branches, trunks, fruit, exchanging that with the soil food web, etc. Our design process of like in this image here in this great project in Portugal, like how we decide how these plants relate to each other is very much based on our understanding of the succession process, and how much light they need for photosynthesis to occur. And if we're successful in putting them in right relationship to each other, what we say is like the right plant in the right place at the right time, the result will accelerate succession toward a more complex, mature, abundant, productive ecosystem. Within this, I think it's important to distinguish this as a process-based form of agriculture. So what does that mean? We look at this photo here. This is a client of ours here in Costa Rica that we've had a chance. They're not so far from me, so I get to go back and document everything, which is really fun because they're very diligent. This little piece of land is surrounded by conventional coffee on all sides. It's just this, you can see that coffee on the right of this image. There's no real shade trees there. It is 100% conventional. That is an input-based agriculture. So that means that the farm manager, that coffee or the owner, they drive to the ag store, they buy sacks of fertilizer, they buy fungicides, they buy pesticides, they bring them back. They're outside inputs that they use to manage that farm. That coffee would fail immediately as a crop without those external inputs. What we're trying to do is, through our imitation of ecological succession, our understanding of photosynthesis, and putting the plants in these specific relationships, we're trying to leverage those ecological processes. What I want to see in these systems, what I'm looking for, is as many green leaves as possible throughout the year as possible. That is a simple indicator of successful photosynthesis. We will manage that, which is a key word we'll touch upon, through pruning. We're little pruning monsters. Darren Doherty makes fun of us Centropic people as we just walk around with our like Velcro snips and we cut all the little branches. We're pruning in these very specific ways to organize biomass, to make light for lower strata, which is a key word, so that the whole system flows, so we get more photosynthesis. And that photosynthesis, what it's doing, that we're really trying to leverage in these moments in this process, is we're capturing carbon. And plants do this amazing thing that we understand more and more. And this really becomes important to study, I think, as we step out of the tropics. But a lot of plants, up to maybe 40% of the sugars they produce through photosynthesis, they actually just send down into the roots. As root exudates, they exchange it with the whole soil food web mechanism for nutrients, for water, for pest control. And it's this whole wide world. And we are playing with that process here. We want it to be very efficient. We want it to be very healthy, etc. So this is really like the ecology behind syntropic farming, or at least the very like short view, quick view of it. Let's look at what I consider to be the 5 principles of syntropic farming. I do not think these principles are set in stone or so well defined. They're not as eloquent as like David Holmgren's 12 principles of permaculture, but syntropic farming is much newer in many ways. I think this is something we'll develop as a community over time, but nonetheless, let me present them to you. Our driving principle, ecological succession, using these plants to make the way for the next group of plants. This is our working with the 4th dimensions, time, the variable time. And we classify plants as placenta, secondary or intermediate, climax. Those words signify how long a plant lives for in its kind of natural ecosystem. So we're interested in the lifespan of individual plants. So when I introduce an artichoke into my system, how long does that artichoke want to live for? We can also take into consideration how long before that plant flowers, before it's sexually mature. These classifications will not be so rigid, but especially when we're beginning, they become very useful to understand how we fill all of the ecological niches within this agroecosystem we're working to create. So ecological succession is our driving principle. You can see just a simple example here. We talk about working from clearing to clearing, which really relates to this act of disturbance through pruning. So our first planting in June, 6 months later, we see everything looking very lush. We're harvesting now all the placenta crops. This is like mustards and arugula and bok choy on the edges of these beds. 6 months later, all of the mulch has been laid down. That dry material is like drying mulch. 6 months after that, we get this huge pulse in growth. And so this is kind of this wave we see as the system increases in abundance over time when we leverage ecological succession and we participate with it, which I think is a key distinguishing factor in syntropic farming. It really demands our participation. Our next principle is stratification. This is the third dimension of space. This is how forests organize themselves. This is very similar to forest layers within ecology, permaculture framework, but it's quite different. This is about light, not height. So this is about the light requirements of individual plants. We classify these as low, medium, high, and emergent. I'll give an example to distinguish this. A lettuce is an emergent plant. It needs full sun throughout the entire length of its lifespan. If you try to grow lettuce underneath this banana or underneath an olive in that shade, it will not do very well. Another emergent is the oak. The oak is an emergent tree, but it does not need sunlight until year 5, year 8, year 10, depending on where you are in the world. But once it's a mature oak, it wants to be in full sunlight. So lettuce, which is like this big when it's mature, and oak, which is that big when it's mature, are both emergent plants. So this is a distinguishing factor. It's not about the height. And we notice just with this example that the shade requirements or tolerances of these plants change throughout their lifespan. This is something we really take into consideration in our management in syntropic farming. For example, a citrus is a medium strata. It can have shady plants creating shade directly over it. But we have to understand that the citrus wants sunlight when it's coming into its flowering season. So that's when we move into this system here, plant 2 and 3, 4 in this image. We would come with our clippers again. We would drop a lot of branches. We'd make room for that citrus tree to get more sunlight and to flower productively. So stratification is our other big principle. Density and diversity are two other principles. They really work together. Diversity, I don't think I need to say so much about it. If you're in this chat, you're probably already on this wavelength. I will say, though, that what we are seeking is a diversity of relationships, not a botanical garden. I think that is a key distinguishing factor. We're not looking for a collection of plants. We're looking for a diversity of relationships. Density is more interesting. If you are new to syntropic farming, we're often planting 40 plants per square meter, often planting a tree every 25 centimeters in a line. This is a density that we are not accustomed to. This density allows us to do many things. It helps inhibit weed growth. It gives us optionality in the future for removing plants, pruning plants, etc. It's a whole world, but we are very focused on high dense systems, high diverse systems that will allow us to meet the first two principles. This all works together, of course. And then last but not least, management, which is kind of a weird word for a principle. I think we need to work on this one, but it gets the point across. We like to say in syntropic farming that 5% of the work is everything: design, sourcing, implementation, planting, and then 95% is all that comes after that. You're in the management. Our management is done through disturbance, through pruning predominantly, but also harvesting, replanting, selective weeding. Pruning is our key activity. I will distinguish the pruning that we do a little bit from like the classic permaculture concept or process of chop and drop. While we do prune to cover the soil and organic material, we're really pruning. That's like a bonus. It's extra. The science now talks more about that, that's not feeding the soil as much as maybe we previously thought. What we're really doing is we're pruning to get these sloughing off of roots and these pulses of growth that communicate with the soil food web about what's going on. We're pruning to increase light to lower strata plants, which increases like the photosynthetic potential of the whole site. Then we're pruning to put plants in their correct relationship to each other. So pruning is a very technical process, but also becomes very intuitive after you start doing this a bit. But much more deliberate than in kind of the food forest concept. All of this process we like to call we describe it as a synchronization. And we're trying to reduce senescence, which is a word that describes the aging process of plants, like dried branches, dead flowers, etc. And we're trying to do this to increase growth pulses. This is a very short version of how we manage these systems. Those are the 5 principles. What we're going to do now is I'm going to turn it over to Javin, ask us a little question, and then we'll dive into the climate distinctions.
Thanks so much, Scott. What a great introduction to the theory, the principles, in a really short amount of time in a very simple way. So back to our conversation about interactivity, about connecting with each other. My question to everybody is, do you have anything unique or any aha that you're taking away from the short theory session that Scott put together? We need to move always our education from a passive to an active conversation. And so I want to take everybody through just a quick, again, minute and a half, thinking back on the principles, thinking back on Ernst Ghost and his originating impulse. What are you taking away as something of an aha or as something unique from Syntropic farming that maybe you haven't seen elsewhere? So we'll give everyone 90 seconds. If you're finished early and you want to start putting into the chat, please do. If you want to share it to everyone, just make sure that your chat is set to everyone. Some folks have been sending messages and I think they're meant for everyone together. But yeah, 90 seconds. What are you taking away from that first section? These are great, everybody. Thanks so much. Keep them coming. So Mathis, lettuce is an emergent, light, not height. Toon also agrees. Placenta plants. Thanks, Farina. Neil, I was thinking about emergent more in the sense of height, not light. Great. Peggy, high density and pruning and thinning are applicable to our nursery and what we share with customers, but also how we design our nursery space. Amazing. Cassia, aha, growing pulses. Natalie, I feel the speed with which regeneration can take place. Yeah, those side-by-side photos, you get that sense real quickly. Ali, aha's about light needs, stratification, related to timing over a lifespan and production cycles, and not just at maturity, at early stages of growth. Amazing. Regen avocado, we are starting with olives and almonds and working to fast track soil growth to build the soil of avocados and mangoes in Sicily. Timing is everything in succession. Well said. Laura, the importance of light and the pruning of requirements. Fantastic. Plant life cycles. Span. Ah, fantastic, everyone. This is great. Yeah, so understanding what we're taking away allows us to come back to what's important as we develop our sense of this work. Thanks so much, folks. If you have more, please do add them. Scott, back to you.
Okay. Oh, so many good questions and comments. All right, we'll keep going. Let's see. Continue, share my screen. Let's come back to this. All right. Oh, can you see my screen, Javin?
It's coming up.
Yeah, all right. There we go.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, so we're going to look at three very broad climate zones. And so, when we say the Mediterranean climate, that's a whole wide world. And that's why we're using the word patterns behind these things. Like there's especially I think as we get outside of the tropics and we start exploring new areas, the nuances are going to become more important. You won't be able to copy and paste as much. You'll really have to understand where you are in relation to that other practitioner, that course you took, et cetera. So we're really going to look at like three simple case studies and these patterns. I know there's people in this group that have more experience than myself in a Mediterranean or temperate climates, et cetera. These like giant topics. We're going to touch into them here. So in the tropics, there is a lot of existing information. This is the easiest place to, go and see what's happening in Brazil or Costa Rica and apply it to where you are. I personally feel like you could, and part of this is because I have a lot of experience, but you could drop me in the tropics of like Thailand or the Congo or somewhere in South America, and I would more or less know what to do without having to really do a lot of deep investigation. And part of this is because it's a very homogeneous climate. It's one of the key patterns here. So while the tropics have a very high amount of biodiversity, if I travel 100 meters in any direction, I'm going to still see very similar things, similar plant species and groups of plants. This is mostly because of this pattern of the heat and humidity are constant year round. And there's the arid tropics. It's like in a whole nother world. But in the humid, wet tropics, the heat and humidity are like a buffer. So even though I might travel like where I am now to where Quinta Grace is, soil type changes, elevation changes. But because they're both hot and humid, a lot of the similar plants can grow. We don't have to reinvent the wheel as much. We don't have to do as much investigation. So for example, this grass you see here, Panicum maximum, Mombasa grass, if you are in the tropics, we know this works. You probably have this seed available to you. It's a common pasture grass that will get seeded out. You don't need to go and try to reinvent this, find new things. Well, if you're in the temperate climate or the Mediterranean is a good example. Like I think Alessandro's from Amadeco's on this call still, like they've spent years trying to figure out what cover crops will grow through the hot, dry summer. And are still playing with that. And maybe we need 5 more years before that pattern language is something that wherever you are in a Mediterranean style climate, now you can repeat that where you are. So it's one of the things it's very interesting about the tropics. And then of course, the tropics are this biomass engine. The big distinguishing factor here is that nutrients are not stored in the soil. If you're in the tropics, you're not trying to build up like deep layers of topsoil. It is not going to happen unless you're at really high elevation and it gets colder. The nutrients are stored in the canopy, in the microbiome, in the insects, et cetera, and they're just cycling very rapidly. That allows us to maintain year-round photosynthesis at like all strata levels. And that's a big difference in these other climates. And so we're able to participate in that rapid growth throughout the year. The rapid growth has some pros and cons. Like if you're not in the tropics, you're probably being like, oh, I wish my system grew faster. Well, you know what also means here? We have to cut that grass every 22 days. Maybe we can extend it to 2 months. Maybe in the dry season, we get a little break, but it's very fast. So there's a lot more labor involved. It is also less forgiving in some ways because succession moves very quickly. So if you miss a pruning cycle, your target crop, your citrus or your avocado, might get quickly shaded out by the eucalyptus, the banana, the acacia, and you miss a growth pulse. And that can really set back a system that will then attract pests to that tree that is like out of position. And so this fast growth is a double-edged coin. I'm enjoying in many ways the slow growth of Italy. We'll see. I'm only on year one, so maybe I'll be frustrated further along on our individual project. But this is a really interesting distinguishing characteristic between these climates that we see. From a management perspective, our pruning, our moments of intervention are very simple. They're very defined. Start of the rainy season, we've started the dry season. It's very clear when we can plant. Our window for planting is a month, 2 months, 3 months, depending on how long our rainy dry season is. And so it's fairly simple in that way. Another big characteristic here is like all of these climates, we use the forest as our model. We imitate the forest. So if I walk into the forest behind me, I'm going to find that it's dominated in many ways by emergent trees. We find a dense canopy that is there to cool down the lower strata, to protect understory plants from intense suns, intense rains. And so emergent trees are a really big part of our system here, in a way that we won't find in colder climates where there is just simply less light intensity. There tends to be strata that are evenly dispersed in the tropics. So what I mean by that is we'll find a simple layer of emergence and then double that number of high plants and double that number of medium plants and double that number of low plants. I'm simplifying, but it's fairly evenly distributed amongst strata, while as we get to these other climates, that will change quite a bit. We won't spend too much time on the tropical case study because there's a lot more information out there. I will pitch our course a little bit. All of these case studies will be in the course. This will include everything from the design, the process, videos, etc. Maybe we'll get the landowner to join us, Jeremy, who took this course last year. But these photos just show this process over time. This is showing like an 8-month process from planting day to like 4 months later to 4 months after that. And again, this is the site surrounded by coffee. It's shocking how much food is coming out of this space. This was degraded coffee land. Again, that was only producing with outside inputs. And so one of the beautiful things of this system, of these systems, is they can require a lot of initial work, but they can also be very productive. I think that's a bit of another distinguishing factor with the classic food forest. That would be more of a low input, like in labor terms, and a low productivity system. Here we're trying to move toward farming, toward agriculture as a higher productivity system. Okay, Mediterranean climate. How are we doing with time, Javin? We doing good?
Doing well.
Okay, cool. Never know. I forget when we started. The Mediterranean. So I've been blessed to fall in love with this amazing Italian woman. And a year ago, her and her family purchased this 3 hectares in Puglia and Alto Salento. I think there was some other folks from, well, definitely from Italy, but from Salento here as well. And it has been a joy to be a beginner again in a place, relearning these patterns, visiting projects like this Casa Mendes in Portugal is amazing. It's a ketchup, mustard, hot sauce company. Key patterns that I find really interesting in the Mediterranean. And again, this is like the mini dive. We don't have time to go super deep into this. The Mediterranean is dominated by these hot, dry summers and the wet, cool to cold winters. So we will get frost in the Mediterranean, which I did not fully understand. And what that means is that there's almost two springs. Like we have spring, so March, April, May, you get this big pulse of growth. The hot, dry summer comes, everybody like slows down. And then we get the fall, where we get another pulse of growth, September, October. It's like this moment when the soil moisture is just right and the soil temperature is just right. And what this results in, it's very interesting. You can see in this image here, a lot of the trees are deciduous. They drop their leaves, but some of them do it in the summer. Others do it in the winter. But we get this shrub layer, this like famous, the Mediterranean macchia, the Mediterranean shrub layer that maintains its photosynthesis year round. And so you can see in this image, particularly the line on the right, that those trees, it's poplar, and I believe it was peaches, it might be apples, I can't remember exactly. And then that shrub layer underneath, which right now is crushed a little bit by the pruning material, that's green year round. So we're getting year round photosynthesis compared to the tropics, where that happens in all the strata. In the Mediterranean, it really happens in this shrub layer. The Mediterranean is also fascinating. It is one of the most interesting areas where you will be on a farm. You'll see the citrus are very happy, or the almonds are very happy. And then you travel to the next town over and you go over a little mountain pass, or you're now on like the leeward side of the hill and the wind hits different, or the soil type changes, and the farmers there cannot grow those crops. There is a rapid changing of microclimates and soil conditions. It's one of the reasons why Italy, for example, has, I think, the highest biodiversity of domesticated plants. So like the vegetables in Italy are super diverse. There's all these varieties, and it's partially because of these nuanced microclimates. So I found that very distinct to the tropics, where again, I can kind of drop in around the world and understand what's going on. When I'm over in the Mediterranean, I need to be more careful about that. There is this very strong past human use, at least in the Mediterranean basin. This is the most domesticated land in the world in many ways. This continuous tillage, continuous human use has led to deforestation, desertification, loss of topsoil, very extreme compaction. It is a less forgiving place in many ways. I'll use that word forgiving again here. I find that it is unforgiving in the sense that your planting window and your pruning windows are very tight. You have when the first rains come. You might also then plant bare root trees in the middle of the coldest time of the year when they're dormant. The summer, you have a small, or before the summer, the spring, you have a small window to get your summer vegetables in, maybe heat-loving fruit trees like oranges and other citrus. But these windows are very tiny, and you need to be like ready for them. You don't really know when it's going to hit. And so I find that to be so far, very interesting for planning work. One of the more forgiving aspects is that it's slower. And in many ways, that's annoying. Sure, we want things to grow faster, but it does give us opportunities to replant. And in the practical nature of this work, it is very common that you don't have all the plants ready, you don't have the money for them all, you forget something, you see what happens a year later, 2 years later. When it's a slower climate, slower growing climate, we can add species in later. And I find that to be a bit of a relief after the speed of the tropics. On a very basic management level, we are looking to drought-proof our farm. We are seeking anti-evaporation strategies. So lots of shade trees up really quickly, and we are applying mulch before the dry season. We are paying attention to patterns in nature. When are the deciduous trees dropping their leaves? That is signaling to me when I might choose to prune, when I might choose to apply mulch. And like most agriculture in the Mediterranean climates, water availability is a dominant factor of what you can grow, how quickly it will grow, etc. In syntropic systems, we are looking to get irrigation out of there as quickly as possible. We might irrigate the whole system in year 1, year 2, maybe just the fruit trees and nut trees. Year 3, we might pull out the irrigation or just leave it there for emergencies, for example. This is a pattern that we see in these climates a lot. This is our project. This is a 2,000 square meter system that is for our consumption of this small gathering space and retreat center. You can see the soil preparation here that we did. This common pattern in syntropic systems is a single time tillage, a single time disturbance of the soil before it is now in perennial cover afterwards. We'll just click through these very quickly so we can see what this starts looking like as similarities to the tropics, differences. We'll get into things like row orientation, the row spacing, paths, access, the use of certain mulch materials over others in the full course. So if you're interested in that, please join us. Part of my sales pitch. Cover crops come into our world. This is very exciting for me. In the tropics, we don't really work with cover crop mixes in the same way we do in Mediterranean and cold temperate climates. So this has been something I very much enjoyed starting to play with and see how they do and when to cut them, etc. These is a big ally in regenerative agriculture in general that we start accessing and we need to be paying attention to a lot in these climates. Just a peek at some of the species. So I mentioned the Mediterranean shrub layer. In these rows, I think we have 40 different shrub species, things that will be more familiar to you, like different types of lavenders or oreganos, but there's all sorts of a world of Santolina and the cistuses, Myoporum, things that I didn't know what those were until I arrived here. The emergence, we'll see some similar names to the tropics, acacias, eucalyptus, poplars. We have neighbors working with Paulownia in these systems that are very interesting. I mentioned the cover crop mix. The Mediterranean, we often have this incredible vegetable world to work with that's already part of the culture. So where we are here, fava and artichokes are a big part of our planting. And we have this beautiful tree culture, olives and almonds and grapes and pistachio and walnut, chestnut, etc., that exists here. Like there is an olive, it's dying. That's another conversation, planting on 3 sides of our property. The other side is almond that's doing okay. It looks a little sad. So that culture exists of genetics and management. We also run into then the bad part of that existing, maybe not bad, but the people being stuck, having done it a certain way for generation after generation, and you're doing something different. This is a very interesting aspect as you bring these new methodologies into places that have established tree crop cultures. I find this to be very interesting to consider and explore and navigate with our local farmers and the folks that are helping us. So that's the summary of our Mediterranean. There's like 1,000 more things I want to say. Javin said I can't talk for 4 hours, but no, I don't want to either. Okay, we're going to dip into our last climate zone. We'll call this cold temperate. This photo is not from cold temperate. I need more photos from cold temperate myself. Every photo I've taken in the slide, I've taken except for this one, just highlighting one of the best examples of cold temperate syntropic farming at Gutemboso outside of Berlin. Hoping to visit maybe this year, inshallah. We'll see how that goes. Unsurprising, on a pattern level, the context, we don't have that much information here. So what do? Well, we find practitioners and projects. I saw Eric Schellenberg in the call here, has a ton of experience, really a leader of this back in upstate New York. We're like talking to those people. What are they doing? We're paying attention to what they're doing. We are in the world of observation, forest ecology. How does that work where we are? I find it very interesting. Animals come into these systems more, and there's a lot of grazing information in temperate climates where we have a really good understanding of grass disturbance from browsing, grazing animals, and regrowth and growth pulses and underground biomass in that savanna ecosystem. And so there's information research there that we can start pulling from for cold temperate in particular. And then the biggest pattern difference is that there's just much more light competition. Days get short. There is simply less photosynthesis happening. And what that means is that when we're designing these systems, I like to think of it like if I have my like tropical design from this weekend, in a temperate, I'm stretching everything out. My row spacing is getting wider. My spacing of my like emergent trees that are really going to shoot up and give me some canopy, some overhead shade, they're spaced further apart. We rely more on shrub layers in these climates. And in that same vein, because we do not get photosynthesis year round because of winter, we're not accumulating biomass above ground in the same way we are in the tropics. We're focused more on below ground biomass. And so again, I would really encourage anyone in this climate to study that concept. I would encourage you to check out Dr. Christine Jones's work. She's a big inspiration for many of us. She's an agronomist, microbiologist, etc. But this concept of below ground biomass of when I go and I prune I don't know, it looks like maybe a gray poplar in this image. When I go and prune that, what's happening below the soil? That's what I'm focused on. And a interesting component of that is that there's some unique pest problems in the temperate climate that all these places have their own problems, challenges, etc. But in the temperate, especially in the US, voles, moles, rabbits, a lot of it will nest under your mulch layer and they'll ring the trees in winter. And so there's interesting conversations. And I think Harry Green of Propagate Ag, a buddy of ours, he's in more of like a conventional agroforestry, maybe we could call it, or regenerative agroforestry. I don't know. But he dabbles in Centropic and he writes about these comparisons and he's interested in, okay, I don't want to accumulate this mulch beside my tree rows because it's going to attract these animals. I'm focused more on below ground biomass instead of above ground biomass. And so these unique pest problems, deer, if you're in the US, it's a huge issue. You will probably need to fence your whole site. This is what orchardists do there, or you might use tree tubes, but these become unique things we have to take into consideration. A big advantage in the temperate is that there's advanced practices in organic ag and machinery that I think to some degree in the Mediterranean exists, in a little bit here in the tropics, very little comparatively. So holistic management as a practice is far more advanced. Market gardening, cover cropping. We have the whole world of like traditional coppice and pollarding. And I recommend this book, Coppice Agroforestry. I think Javin has a whole course on this with Mr. Mark Krawczyk. There's these other practices that are very advanced that have sometimes machinery and tools already developed for them that we should stand on those shoulders. Like market gardening has a deep understanding of intercropping of vegetables, of relay planting of vegetables, what follows what, that we might tap into to apply that to these tree-based systems. That's something that I find very exciting. in the cold temperate. There's also this whole, if you're a permaculture person, the whole world of like weird berries, jostaberry and Saskatoon berry and honeyberry and aronia, etc. Like there's this big world of these understory berries. Mushrooms become a big player in the temperate of the Mediterranean as well. That become really interesting. And then like all these medicinal shrubs, like the ginsengs and plants like that that grow in the understory of our forest ecosystems here. We have opportunities to tap into those in ways that here in the tropics it's not as common. It's trickier. Our understory layer as a system matures is really quite limited, which might surprise people. That the density of the overstory layers start limiting it. So Ah, and then just this fascinating conversation. So I have I'm in the opportunity to be in Roger Geitzen. He developed the Temperate Centropic WhatsApp group that's so good. Maybe some of you are in it. This great conversation about when to prune. And so there's still a lot of doubts in these climates of when do you do certain activities. And I think this speaks back to the idea of a pattern language. We're developing that together. So do you winter prune, which is a more traditional method? It's safer, so we don't get fungal diseases, but it doesn't trigger growth pulse because it's winter. Or do you summer prune, where after we prune, we get a growth pulse of plants? We can use that, it fits within the Centropic philosophy theory. Very interesting. What might happen, and I think some people are doing this, is we'll just winter prune our target crops, our fruit and nut trees, but we'll summer prune all of the support species. So there's things that people are playing with in these climates that I find to be very interesting. And I hope in another 5 years, there will be more consensus around the best way to do that. I'm very grateful for the practitioners that are pushing this forward that I get to learn from on the background edge. And then just quickly, this was our first install in cold temperate. This is in Terani, Hungary. It's like the coldest part of Hungary. Frost arrived, day one of the course. And to give example of how I approach this, like I don't know this climate, similar to where I'm from back in the United States. So what do I do? Well, I called an amazing practitioner, Renke, who you'll see his contact at the end, or his name at the end, who is really like the leader in Europe in these temperate systems. And I had him consult on our design. And so when we're stretching our knowledge, stretching our skills, like ask for help. This is a big part of this process. Our community that we're forming around this is essential. You can see the system. We have these kind of classic beds shaped in this specific way so that energy accumulates in the center. The system was designed to have chickens. That's chickens on the left. And then our heavy mulch, straw, hay, wool, different materials that we had access to on this project. This system extends about 9 more of these rows on the right of the power lines here. And you can see how the chickens will like slip into those inner rows. It will also we'll experiment with cover crops in the spring. And it was really fun for me again to like touch upon plants really from my childhood growing up, like dogwood. Beautiful dogwoods in my parents' house back home. Now I'm planting dogwood as a support species. It's very, very something that never would have occurred to me that could be a support species in the same way that Mexican sunflower is a support species here in tropics. So just a sampling of the species we used here. This was classic fruit trees like apples and pears and peaches, walnuts, oaks, and chestnuts were seeded, direct seeded here. We had a really heavy fruiting shrub layer, some of these kind of weird permaculture underutilized crops. And then the support trees, very interesting to see what we're experimenting with. One of these support trees was every 25 centimeters down the center of this line. Willow and poplar classics. We get autumn olive, bird cherry, which also produce food for us, chase tree, all the different locusts. are interesting to work in spite of their spines, etc. So that was our temperate example. This will be a case study in the course. We'll detail out the spacing, everything. It'll be very pretty for you. And I just want to finish up, and I'll turn it back to Javin. You know, just giving credit, like so much of my inspiration comes from people around the world. This is like a non-exhaustive list, but perhaps it'll be useful for you to like Google people, find projects. There's a couple communities in here. Scott Hall is a really great paid community called Syntropia. Milan just started a free school community focused on the Mediterranean. He's based in Spain. Yeah, Renke I mentioned. Roger Geitzen organizes like a monthly meetup online that gets posted to YouTube about temperate syntropic farming with different practitioners. It's excellent. You'll see patterns here of this is mostly US and Europe. I think there's whole worlds in Australia, New Zealand that I'm less tied into, in South America, in Africa that I'm just not as tied into. I think these are the more advanced projects, partially because of Ernst Gosch's connection from being Swiss and then speaking Portuguese in Brazil and bringing that over to Europe. So thank you guys. We have this amazing course that Javin will tell you about. We're offering in-person courses. It's great to connect with people and see so many folks. I hope this was helpful on a pattern level. I'll try to get to some of these questions now, but we have a final question for you guys, and I will stop sharing and pass this over to Mr. Javin.
Scott, as usual, thank you so much for your incredible dedication and conversation to this work. You're so generous. You acknowledge your sources, acknowledge the conversations that are out there. That is not common. There's a lot of people in this work who feel like they're islands under the sun, and you've done such an incredible job with it. So thanks very much. I've got a quick question for everybody before we jump into talking a little bit about the course. And Scott, if you want to start taking a look at the Q&A and start answering them, now's a
Already
good
on it.
time. Of course you are. Of course you are. So my question for everyone is, if you could apply syntropic farming well, if you could apply syntropic farming well, what would change over the next few years for your land and for your life? So the question is, if you could apply syntropic farming well, what would change over your land or life over the next few years? Again, we'll take 90 seconds if anybody wants to think about that. It's such a great opportunity to think about the application of this, how to change, how to move forward with this. So yeah, 90 seconds. Interested to hear what you have to say. Thanks, everybody. There's some great answers here. So, Laura, serious longevity for future generations. Yeah, get an amen on that one. Castillo, hopefully I'll be able to create a domino effect inspiring others with a working, thriving example. I'd spend a lot more time pruning than I do now. That's for sure. Absolutely. Robert, better productivity, healthier environment. Well, Lisa, not only would you spend more time pruning, but your forearms, so strong, so strong. Delts, very strong. Yeah. Faster regeneration from Scott on all fronts, from soil, food web up, greater and more diversity and productivity. Marius creating a paradise Airbnb in Hanover, middle of Germany. Mira, the change might be actually gaining some profit from the farm. Love the honesty. Stenbergen feeding the community in a regenerative way. Toby, one key aspect is just bliss and aware of natural processes when working with agroforestry systems, especially Centropic. It's a quality of life. Melanie, probably be more relaxed about the state of the planet. Yeah, there's something about having a productive landscape around you that quells a lot of that outside aspect. Less weeds from Mathis. Transform the land from a tired, overworked version into an energetic, youthful, and growing one. More food security for the island. Ain't that the truth? So beautiful. Currently working for solutions for broken water cycles. Start living on the way that I imagined. Yeah, totally. No more butting my head against the wall. That's such a great one, Alec. Thank you for that. Great answers, everyone. Jen, soil regeneration. Absolutely. Inspiring people for generations to come. Yes. Minds, heart, hand, soil, animals, plants change dramatically. Isn't that the truth? Fantastic, everybody. These are excellent. Thank you so much. Such incredible, thoughtful answers. And this is why we do this type of work, to connect with people who have that sort of longevity thinking, a conversation about 7 generations or longer, about what and how we're going to leave the planet, and potentially leave it with a better sense of stewardship, which I think is, for most of us, the main conversation here. I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk about the course that's coming up. If this is the part that you've been dreading or you don't want to hear about, that's totally fine. Tune out, grab a washing break. After this, we'll come back with questions with Scott. Scott's actually actively answering questions. So make sure to come back, take a look at the Q&A and see if your question was answered. But I want to talk a little bit about this course that's coming up on February 11th. It's an incredible opportunity to check into the work that Scott has done and to understand deeply how to do this work as Scott has demonstrated today. And I think most people, as you've experienced Scott's education today, you get that he knows what he's doing, and he's been doing it for a while, and he's such a masterful educator that I so appreciate that level of dedication that he brings to this conversation. I'm also going to be sharing a case study from one of our students, Priyanka, who post-course, so this was a year and a half ago, said, "I cannot recommend this course highly enough. An abundance of supporting resources are provided, from extensive species list and detailed information to reading materials. The course has empowered me and confidence to begin my Centropic journey." We're going to close that opened book we just opened by reading that quote in a little bit, by literally seeing what she's done in a year and a half. Not to mention, if I can keep you listening, we're going to see elephants grazing actively into the system, which was designed that way, which is pretty incredible. We all have our own constraints and issues, and it's incredible to see those pieces. So within this course, what do you learn? Well, you learn forest succession, life cycle, stratification, plant consortium design, installation and management, pruning, all of that pruning, and climate adaptation. It's a broad look that goes from patterns to details on all of these levels to give you the experience and the confidence to be able to apply after the course. That is a tough thing to say and say with confidence, but not only with Priyanka, but our other students, I can safely say it's possible. But what makes it different? Well, it's grounded in science and experience. This is lived experience that we get to share. And that's difficult to convey in just videos or just didactic readings. With Scott there answering questions, the ability to actually design in the class, submit your design to Scott for feedback, get that feedback, and move forward. It's a very rare, because the accessibility of this, it's not universal. So being able to work with Scott's approach, to work on progress over perfection, which is a big piece of this, it's baby steps, and to be in a group of really supported individuals. Yeah, some of the folks here created lifelong friends and conversations. We highly encourage learning buddies. We have a WhatsApp group so people can connect during the course and after the course. And here we start with Priyanka. So this is in Tamil Nadu in southern India. And she had zero farming experience before this. There was 1,200 meters squared of a Centropic plot that they designed and installed. And it was in this rewilded project into Mill. And they're in the wet, dry tropics in southern Decca Plateau. It's a dry deciduous forest region. And the property abutted a wildlife sanctuary with wild animals, including elephants, Indian guar, which are wild cattle, wild pigs, leopards move through often, which is a very different constraint. Growing food in this general area would lead to more conflict, especially between humans and elephants. So that was a major design concern. And therefore, they wanted to explore how they could create a syntropic system that allowed for movement of wild elephants through it while focusing on growing high value climate crops because they still wanted production out of this, right? So through the course, specifically the student workbook, which we provide to students, the exercises we provide to students, all of the incredible spreadsheets, which help you to design your consortiums, choose your plants, make sure you understand them, allowed her to have a clear and detailed design, a roadmap, if you will, and a plan. And she created her project, submitted to Scott. Scott gave feedback. And from there, she had a second iteration. And from that second iteration, this is what she designed. This was a local mix of medicinal plants, native trees, high value fruit and nut trees, robust pioneers, biomass species. Since elephants love grass, the design incorporated wide grass roads because they're big animals. So, in so many ways, when we're designing farm systems, we have headlands and spaces for vehicles. Well, in this situation, we had to design for elephants. And so they prepped the land in the months leading up to the monsoon and planted the system with some friends on June 2025. All the energy spent in planning paid off. And this is what we talked about at the beginning. It's not about mistakes in the field, it's about mistakes on paper. Make the mistakes with somebody who knows what they're doing and then go off and do the work. So Priyanka and her partner lived on the property and they watched the system grow, observing how animals interact. And it's been, as she says, very, very interesting. A male Indian guar, these wild cattle, made the property the home for a while and grazed the grass rows every night. So drop the top, create exudates, create biomass below. What happens above, so too happens below. And that Indian guar definitely stepped on some of the plants. But interestingly, many of the medicinal plants and sport species they had planted, they chose to be able to regrow from a section of a stem. So therefore they could withstand the trampling. Very interesting to have all of these connective pieces. And in short time, even without a background of farming, they learned how to be growing alongside this system. And for them, it had been a very enriching experience in their words. And one of these enriching experiences was having this night cam of this elephant who came in and grazed the grassroots. Not something you would see every day, not something that you would imagine would happen, but there it was. So some decisions they've made were based on logic, some were more intuitive, and they were very grateful to Scott as a mentor to guide them and to help them when they were stuck. And that's one of the greatest things about this course. You have somebody to guide you along. So the plan now is to manage the trial plot for another year. So nucleated design, we do small designs, and then we replicate that across larger fields. So always getting it down, getting it good, and then replication. As one of my mentors, Sepp Holzer, likes to say, the book of nature is always open for when, not if, we misread the book of nature. And this is a great example because we go slow. So how did she get there? Well, in this training that she took to create this plot, we've got live session trainings. We have 8 live sessions and we have pre-recorded material. So students go through the pre-recorded material. They come to the sessions. We do some live material around case studies, around group exercises, about going deeper into the material. It's very interactive. And we get full replays for a year. So after the last session of the course, you have full replays for the year. Also, Scott's put together an incredible species database, over 1,000 species list, and he's consistently working on it. Every time I talk to him, oh, I put a few more. Oh, I found this great plant. This is what happens when you're working with somebody who's a geek, who's a nerd, but who's so impassioned by this.
Hey.
Those are words we love, Scott. We embrace
Oh,
them. This is nerdvana. This is us coming into our own. And with the student design template, you have the ability to create your own design, as Priyanka did. We have assignments and field exercises to go out to experience your site. So while the education is online, the experience is in the real. And there is that opportunity to get direct feedback on your design. Not to mention the designs from last year are still in the course. So you can already see, I think it's 7 different students' applications of this. Also, there's over 150 vetted resources, a curated resource database of what to do, where to go, core readings, watch list, video list, plus case studies and global examples. All in, this is over $3,000 worth of value, which is just incredible to have in a single course. Everything has been so meticulously curated with Scott's enthusiasm and experience. Now, that would be worth it at that, but we're offering this course at just $549, which is pretty exceptional. All that value, as Scott was telling me, that's less than a quarter of what your first plant order would be for a hectare. So for less than a quarter, you can avoid the mistakes that most people make. But it gets better than that. Between now and Sunday, if you're keen on this course, if it's time to take it, have it as a resource for a year, attend any of the live sessions you can. If you can't attend the live sessions, you can always watch the replay. You can submit questions. Doesn't matter where you are in the world. You can get this course for just $399 up until Sunday at midnight. So imagine this. Instead of guessing, instead of trying to think about what to do, instead of watching tons of videos, you work with an entire system that's been proven not only by Scott's experience, but also through the course itself. So I would say if this would be for you, if you want to plant your own system, you want clarity and structure to learn how, and you're ready to do the work and you don't want to wait any longer. Not to mention, you don't want to make the mistakes. There's so much lost when we make those mistakes. But I don't have to speak about the course. The students did a great job about it. They loved being there. They loved being a beginner farmer. They loved how organized everything was, how everything went piece by piece by piece by piece. Pia, who I think is actually on this call, was in the course. There's an incredible array of experiences that have come out of this course that has allowed people to have confidence in what they're doing, has allowed them to go beyond what they thought they could, and to really develop such an incredible aspect of their lives through the work of Centropic agroforestry. But it doesn't stop there. We have the grow to know guarantee. So here's my guarantee to you. Apply this work, take the course, apply it, go for a season, go for a year. And if you see no improvements, nothing at all, if we've totally led you astray, I'll give you your money back for the course and I'll give you $100. It's how confident we are in this process and this conversation. Scott and his team at Porvenir Design have done an incredible job with their Centropic systems. They've created such an ability to do this work well. We know it works. We're confident with it. We stand by what we put together. So regular price is $549. That starts on Monday, but until Monday, so today, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you can get the course for just $399. For some reason, this says $349. That's wrong. You can get it for $399. So if you are keen, if you want to jump into this course right now, feel free. I'm going to put this into here. And if you would like to take a look at it, please let me know. It would be great to have you in the course and fantastic to have us all together in that time. Excellent, folks. Thanks so much for being in this conversation today. I'm going to take a look and bring up the Q&A, see if anything's missing. If anybody has any questions about the course, happy to pick that up now. We'll just wait a quick second if everybody does have a question about the course. Okay. Scott, you've been answering questions like mad. Is there any question you wanted to answer live in any way, shape, or form, sir?
I mean, yeah, that's an option. Great. Okay. Well, I'll just answer the rest.
Okay, great.
All right. First question. What would be the best strategy to speed up process at the beach? Oh man, just go surfing. It's like chill. I don't know. Okay. Yeah, beach is interesting. At least here in Costa Rica, tends to dry out a lot quicker. Things like iguanas are major limiting factors on plants. It's going to be kind of like everywhere. Like you picking these plants that grow really well and are really happy there. You're going to like the abandoned lots, the edges of the road, and seeing what is thriving, and you're collecting that material and you're using it on your site. Um, Organic material has this very interesting ability to buffer all aspects of soil. So if you have sandier soil, it improves the structure. If you have heavier clay soil, it improves the structure. If you have high pH soil, it balances the pH. If you have alkaline soil, it balances the pH. So organic material is going to be a big ally for you. But just like, again, density of plants, density of plant roots in the ground, and just following the principles and you know uh, you should be able to do it. Like if you're in full sand and like beach sand, I don't know, that might be trickier. So that's my beach question. Um, to use the term pioneer species in syntropic agriculture, are these plants in the early succession in the environment? So that word more or less refers to secondary one or secondary two species. So like classic fast growing trees, poplar, acacias, etc. So we don't use that word so much. Partially is that we're working on language. Language is powerful. So, the language of like invasive species, the language of pioneer. There's a certain language of separation of us and them, of colonization that we're moving against. That's why we use placenta, which is for a different group of species, but placenta, this thing that nurtures the embryo in the womb, that nurtures our first plants. So this is where the term pioneer fits in, but it does refer to secondary one, secondary two species. Brandon, you went to Fazenda Oro Fino and Enrique. Um, Interesting. He's taking out Mombasa. He's a drain of nutrients. Instead, he's just doing Juntera in his interrows. Print a bunch of gas common pattern. Yeah, so that's interesting to hear. I was there like 3, 4 years ago, and what we saw there, and this is what we do now, is that the Mombasa's in the system for like 3 years, and then it's removed, and then we put in the Juntera, which we call Nacedero here, and that aguantara that can handle more shade. I'm happy with the Mombasa grass in our systems. Pretty convinced that it works well, but he has a lot of experience. Maybe the most experience of anyone in the world managing a single farm. Yeah, so I think that's something to take into consideration. Let's see, moving to Durham, North Carolina, June-ish, want to start experimenting there. And I've been thinking over interrows, bring a bunch of grasses, interrows, comfrey, sunchokes. Yeah, in the temperate climate, there are some perennial bunching grasses that people are experimenting with. Miscanthus is one. I think that's how you say it. I think it's still very experimental. I think you are on a better track with, well, and also the miscanthus, like to get large quantities of that. I don't know if it's so easy. But comfrey, sunchokes, no brainers, that whole group of plants. And then I think cover crops and establishing a perennial cover crop in the inner row is going to make a lot of sense for you. Yeah, hope that helps. And yeah, I wonder if there's other North Carolina people. All right, Peggy, autumn olive over the land and are asking neighbors to keep in check since the birds are spreading it quickly. Sure. Yeah, I don't know that much about autumn olive. It is a controversial plant in many ways, in the same way that perhaps eucalyptus is. There are alternatives to it. If you're worried about it, then don't plant it. There are also, I believe, sterile varieties of autumn olive that you can purchase now. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's true, that you can buy at nurseries. But yeah, you should be smart about what you're introducing and what works. So for example, Paulownia can spread very easily by seed. When we use Paulownia, which I don't personally love, at least on the tropics, I'm not convinced, we buy sterile varieties. It still root suckers a lot. So we are looking for, particularly with our support species, plants that are quote unquote well behaved. I want plants that will stay in their space, not using vines so much. I don't want things that'll fall over and sprout all over. I'm avoiding things that will seed a lot unless I want that action to happen. And so, yeah, you might decide autumn olive is not the choice for you. You might also decide it's the perfect plant and you just have to be managing it before it turns into ripe fruit, because it does all of these amazing things for you. So that's something I would take into consideration. And yeah, I think that's all the questions. I'm checking them off.
Amazing, Scott. Bravo.
Done.
Fantastic.
Done.
All right, folks. I've got one last question for you. What's the gift of being present today? What's the value of being present with Scott and the conversation today? What are you taking away? So, quick question here, final question before we officially close, and we'll stick around for some bonus time if anybody wants to stick around and talk shop. But I'm really curious, what are you taking away from our conversation today? What's the gift? 90 seconds to think about it, put it into the chat. It's also a great time to give Scott your thanks. But what are you taking away? What's important about presenting his presentation, and what are you taking away from today? So, Guy, energy and enthusiasm, amazing. Peggy, reinvigorating and expanding our mission with our work, 100%. You got to come back to church sometimes and sing the hymns. Sandra, I'm happy to see there's a lot of agroforestry action in the world. Alec, I'm sold. Excited to get started, knowing that there's someone out there to guide me in my climate, 100%. Got feeling more oriented and inspired. Stenbergen, Syntropic Farming, the way to go. Good bumper sticker. Robert, great to see Centropy is working everywhere. Finding out there's so much interest in regeneration. There is hope. Inspiration from Jen. Thank you so much. Melanie, inspiration and what we can do mindset to plant in all environments. Maria, love the chat. People who think as I do, and the passion Scott brings to the presentation makes me feel more inspired and excited about this journey. Laura, thanks so much. Great to feel part of the movement. Really motivated to start my own project. Brandon, more animal.
Animal.
There we go. Got it. To put initial designs down on paper. Love it. Margot, reinvigorated to see so many people interested. Fantastic, folks. Thank you so much. Well, it's been such a pleasure to be with you all today, to share this as a tool, a practical skill to live on the planet as if we intend to stay. Such an important mission of mine with regenerative living. And with that, I will officially say thank you for being here. If you would like to join us in the course, it'd be a pleasure to have you. After the course is done, which will be in a couple of months, we'll transition it to a self-paced course. So if it's better for you, definitely keep your eyes open, but we'd love to have you in class. It's a really special experience for those that are ready. Somebody was talking about being in places where parity pricing might be more appropriate. Definitely give me an email. Happy to discuss parity pricing. We've done that a few times for students that are in places where the pricing is a problem. So happy to do that. All right, folks. Well, Scott, give us your final thoughts before we officially close, and we'll stick around for a few minutes of bonus time. Final thoughts to everybody, and thank you so much, sir, for doing what you do. It's simply incredible.
Yeah, thank you, Javin. It's just like a blessing to be in front of people and connected in this way, and like see so many people whose names pop up in my radar, courses, or internet. And what I would really encourage people, like one of the beautiful things about diving into any agriculture, but I think Centropic farming in particular, is like you have to become a plant person. And if that's like an invitation for you, which it should be, I would really encourage you to go all in, whatever that means to you. Things. But this is like, we need more plant people in the world. And this is an invitation. So I really hope you can join the course. We put in a huge amount of work on it. Something that we're excited to start in a few weeks.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll stick around for a few minutes of bonus time. So if anybody has more they want to say or more they want to chat about, we'll stick around for a little bit here. Thanks for your thanks. Lots of people coming in. Thanks, Scott and Javin. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for giving us the inspiration to do this wherever we are. Fantastic. Awesome.
I'm gonna show you something, Javin.
Yeah, yeah, please do. Please do.
Look at my new toy.
Oh, now we're talking. Is it Makita?
It's not Makita, but it works with Makita batteries specifically.
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
got like 4 low. It's like you can
You go slow.
crush things. And then I have an extension that's like a 2 meter extension.
Oh my goodness.
Pretty exciting.
When I was working with Mark on the Coppice Agroforestry, he introduced me to brush blades for weed whackers, and these things are infinitely sharpenable, way better than what I was using. It got me off the scythe for a little bit, but that was necessary as well.
Huh?
All right.
We had a
Any other
question about
thoughts? Yeah, let's
the
check the
course in
question.
June, July.
Yeah, did you
That's
want
the
to
other
talk a little
question.
bit about the July course?
Yeah, so we're going to be launching and we're starting to record material. This is like the tropical permaculture design course online. Our team's been teaching these courses for many years. I've probably taught like 25 plus of them. Um, and we're going to like try to strike this great balance of inspiration, very practical, like how do you do these things and when and why, and the design process of really being in design mentality, permaculture design, the principles, and then I'll be very specific to the tropics. What does that mean as we move around the world? And I think is it 6 months? I
Six
can't
months.
remember.
6 months. So
6 months.
we're meeting every other week. We're
Yeah.
meeting for a session anywhere between 2 and 3 hours. There's a fair bit of content pre-class, so there's content to work on, and then we're spending a lot of time together, deepening connection and conversation, going through the materials. And there's an opportunity to design a conceptual design for your site or your conversation with permaculture principles and practices. We're bringing an incredible array of experiences in this work. We've all been at this for, I think we're over 50 years all combined, and it really exciting. It'll be my 80th PDC. I think that's mine. Scott, how many have you done?
27.
27. Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's taking all the knowledge and the wisdom that we've garnered over our work and then being able to practice it in really good ways. So really, really, if you're looking for your first or your second PDC, I'd highly recommend it. We got a question here from Gerald. What I have to work with is a 1980 bench pasture that is now 25 years old woodland, gum, oak, sumac, hickory, pine, and sawbriar. Cool.
What does bench pasture mean?
It's a good question. I think it's probably on like a serrated glacial bench. When the glaciers receded, we get benching. And so is that what that means, Gerald? Also, I'm not seeing a question there, but I appreciate knowing what you're working on. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Uh,
What I can say is in the course, we will get into if you're working in an existing forest ecosystem, if you're working in like a common pattern is a old orchard, like semi-abandoned old orchard. Like I'll be renovating like a food forest orchard up the road here. Actually go there Friday, the next Friday to redo the design, etc. Rolling Hills, bench is a flat area. Okay, cool. Yeah.
so
But we
like a
will
plot.
dive into like, what do you do in a scenario like that? And syntropic farming might not be your solution. Like it might not be the best methodology for that land. It really depends on the context, depends on a lot of, like here in Costa Rica, it's a lot of legal aspects of clearing forest land. If it's been classified as forest, things like that become very interesting. Yeah.
We're going to pop around here. We've got a chat. Melanie, Scott, are you doing an in-person course in Costa Rica in the near future? You are. You are.
July, not marked on the calendar yet. We have a 10-person wait list. Yeah, it'll be back at that Cinco Ramos project over in near Rio Celeste in the north.
Awesome.
Come join.
Awesome. From Stinbergen, how can syntropic farming be practically applied in the Kenyan coast tropics where years of climate change, degraded soils, and falling conventional practices have affected communities? And how can it regenerate land while also being a profitable and sustainable livelihood for small scale farmers?
Um, I think that syntropic farming is made for what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Like, I think it's a very powerful methodology for regenerating degraded soils. And let me give the opposite example. Like we have projects here in Costa Rica that are on like good volcanic soil. I don't know if syntropic farming is necessary. Like the cacao grows really well. I don't always recommend this. I really think it's powerful in degraded land. Um, we will adapt the methodology to the context. We'll probably approach something like that with what we call an accumulation, or Scott Hall calls it like an infestation system, where we're really just focusing on like simple soil building plants for a year or 2 years or even 3 years before we try to grow food on the land. So I do think it'll be applicable to your context.
great. Toby, do you adjust the topics of the course to the audience? I mean, specifically tropics versus Mediterranean versus temperate, or is it mainly tropics? No, it's completely bespoke. So Scott's approach is to teach the system, the process, the conversation, and then to use examples from these different climates. And we have a pre-class survey where we get a sense of the student body and understanding what the student body is requiring. So Scott and I have created a course that's very bespoke and articulates around the students. It's a great question, Toby. Scott, anything to add to that?
No, it's
Okay, great.
perfect. Come.
Lords, do you have something specific for Syntropy and desert climate?
Yeah, we'll touch upon that. There are really good resources out there. I see Brandon actually linked to one. Fernando Repello has a bunch of resources on this in the Caatinga climate and area in Brazil. I think, again, in these degraded lands, these very dry lands, it's very powerful where we start getting into use of cactuses. And it's slow, but there's a lot of evidence of it working in arid climates. And so we will be touching upon that in the course.
And you
Yeah,
have
we do a lot
a
of
section of
resources for that.
resources. Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
Yeah.
Great
Yeah, a
minds.
lot of resources that have like really been plucked out of the wide world for arid world.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, you're so welcome. Thanks from Leo. Scott and Javin, thanks a million for the invitation to the webinar and a $400 course. Great to see so many people from different countries, even from my country of birth, Holland. Take care, you all. Thanks, Leo. That's a very nice sentiment. Lisa,
Leo.
how wide have you seen tree lines in alley cropping systems? Anything like a linear food forest, 3 to 4 meter wide possible?
Yeah, like seen systems that are 10 to 15 meters when cattle are going to be incorporated or like a larger tractor machinery, maybe 20 meters. And then it's very climate specific. So Mediterranean, you see things like maybe the closest I've seen were like 1.5 meters between tree rows, where you just need a lot of shade. Our tree rows set based a lot on, it's based on what we're trying to grow. So we're often taking our target crop and what is the standard spacing of that, and that's going to set our line patterning. And then if we're mechanizing it, how are we managing the inner rows? And so it's a whole process to make that decision.
Awesome. Peggy, I'd like to put these classes on our agroforestry regional knowledge exchange calendar. If you're okay with that, yes, we're very okay with that. We want to get it out there. So thanks so much. If you need anything more than what's on the landing page, please let me know. Just send me an email. I'd be happy to jump into that. Is there any recording? Yes, Stefan, in all of the copy, we've told people that this will be available afterwards. We'll process this, pop it onto YouTube. It'll be freely available. And I'll be sending an email out to everybody that has been in the webinar and wasn't able to make it the webinar. So that way they get the replay. So no worries. Sorry you got the time wrong. Brandon. Scott, curious about your safety protocols process for managing emergence in your system.
Um, I'm here in Costa Rica. We chainsaw and Crocs, so yeah, it's a good question. Like I think that anytime we have to climb a tree with a chainsaw, we are not doing ourselves any favor. Like that is how these systems developed. And that's like a common practice. What you see skid steers driving through fields with people on like raised platforms, and then a big is extendable saws, so extendable chainsaws, extendable clippers, and designing your system for that machinery is, I think, really important. Avoiding spiky plants is kind of a no-brainer, and then just keeping in mind that like there is such a huge need for the development of these machineries in agroforestry systems, like in general. Like it's just if we compared funding to, whatever random rice growing versus agroforestry, it's, almost, it's non-existent. And so there's a lot of work to do there.
Yeah, great. Lisa has amended her question to say not the alley width, but the tree
Hmm.
line width. So original
Oh,
question
tree
was,
line width,
how wide are
three to
the
four
tree line
meters.
widths?
Yeah, I've conversed with people about doing very wide tree rows, like 3 to 4 meters wide. But what you're getting into there is, I think it's a different practice if you're going to do really wide rows. It's like a shelter belt, a forest buffer, you're like wildlife corridor. You might be looking at stuff more like Miyawaki forests that might be more useful. Our tree rows are usually 50 centimeters to a meter. Maybe a little bit wider than that. Yeah, that's fairly standard. Doesn't mean you can't do different things, like please all aboard. But that would be a standard practice.
And Scott, you've also talked about this. We do this a lot in a lot of the agroforestry systems. It's about management. It's about access. When you
But when
get
you
to
get
a
in there,
tree row that's 4 to 5 meters wide, now access becomes problematic. So much of row culture is due to access and management. And the wider you get, this is sometimes the complaint of the permaculture food forest, is you can't get into it. You can't manage it. You can't work with it. So it's really about keeping accessible. Mar, will there be a copy of the chat available? No. The chat is ephemeral. It comes and goes like a spring melt. Dimitri, how many species would an infestation stage include? You mentioned they're not necessary, too diverse.
yeah, I can speak about the tropics. For me, probably be as little as like maybe 3 species even. Could be like a Mombasa grass, bananas, and acacia, or Mombasa, Botón de Oro, and eucalyptus kind of thing. I think density is more important than diversity in general in these systems.
Amazing. Well, folks, it looks like our questions are over, and we still have a third of the people we started with, which is incredible. You folks are definitely the pioneers. You're the ones that are going to take this work out to the greater world. And thank you. Thank you for staying with us through this time. Um, I hope to hear more about your work. If you want to share with Scott or I, we'd love seeing projects and hearing what people are doing if you decide to take this. And yeah, if the time is right for you in the course, please do reach out. It'd be a pleasure to have you in the course. It's such an exceptional course. We're quite proud of it, especially with some of the results we've been seeing, like Priyanka and others. So thank you again. We'll see you on the next one. If you're keen on telling the stories about social media, there's another webinar next week about telling stories on social media, and be happy to see you there as well. Scott, what's your final words? What's your bumper sticker for everybody?
Work in the shade. I keep a note in the back of my phone and in between the case. It's like it's one of my goals. Work in the shade.
Awesome. Take care, everybody. Pleasure.
Ciao, chicos.